Girl, no older than 7, makes an impossible promise. Let my dad go, and I'll make you walk. The court laughed, but they weren't prepared for what happened next. Stay tuned to see how this miraculous moment changes everything. Trust me, you won't believe your eyes. If you're part of the Black Visionaries family, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one. The courtroom was thick with tension. A heavy silence hung in the air as the young girl stood in front of the judge. She was only about 7 years old, yet in this moment, she seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her small body was poised, and her gaze was fixed directly on the man in the wheelchair. Her dark, curly hair framed her face, bouncing slightly with each movement. She wore a simple blue dress, one that seemed to match the innocence and purity in her eyes. But despite her delicate appearance, the words that were about to come from her mouth would echo through the entire room. "Let my dad go, and I'll make you walk," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. It was not a plea or a cry for help. It was a declaration, a promise. At first, the courtroom erupted into laughter. It was the kind of laughter you might hear when a child speaks out of turn or makes an outlandish statement. Everyone knew the judge in front of her was a man who had been paralyzed for years, his body trapped in a wheelchair. The idea that this small girl could somehow make him walk again was, to them, absurd. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a sharp suit and sharper demeanor, shook his head in disbelief. He couldn't help but smirk at what he saw as nothing more than a child's fantasy. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath. The defense attorney, equally baffled, chuckled nervously, unsure of how to react to such an unexpected interruption in the trial. But the judge, Judge Parker, didn't laugh. He didn't flinch either. Instead, his expression softened, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, he looked at the girl with something other than the stern authority he was known for. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, a mixture of curiosity and perhaps hope. The courtroom fell silent again. The girl's gaze never wavered. She stood there, small but determined, her chest rising and falling with each breath. "I'm serious," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Let my dad go, and I'll make you walk." Judge Parker sat back in his wheelchair, still staring at her. A quiet murmur ran through the room. What was going on here? Was this some kind of game? Was the little girl playing a prank, or was there something more to her words? The trial had been going on for days, each day seeming more hopeless than the last. The young girl's father, a man wrongfully accused, had been sitting shackled at the defendant's table. The charges against him were flimsy at best, fabricated lies that had somehow made their way into the courtroom. He wasn't guilty, but the system seemed to be failing him at every turn. And then there was his daughter, a bright-eyed child with a heart too big for her small frame. Every day, she sat in the courtroom, watching her father endure the weight of accusations that weren't his. She saw the way his shoulders slumped, how his face became gaunt with worry. But more than anything, she saw the way he began to lose hope. It was the look in his eyes that haunted her, and it was that look that pushed her to do something drastic. Her mother had given up. The trial had gone on far too long, and the legal system seemed to be doing nothing to help them. But the little girl couldn't just sit by and watch her father suffer. She had to do something. She didn't know how, but she knew that if anyone could make a difference, it was her. And so, she had walked up to the judge. It was a bold move. It was a move that no one expected, least of all Judge Parker. The man had been paralyzed for years, trapped in that wheelchair after a tragic accident had left him unable to move his legs. His entire identity had been reshaped by his disability. He had once been a man of great physical strength, but now his strength came from his mind, his knowledge of the law. Still, the physical loss was something he could never quite reconcile. But now, as the young girl stood before him, something inside him stirred. He looked at her, this tiny, brave child who was willing to speak up for her father, for justice, and he realized that perhaps there was more to this moment than just her words. Maybe she was offering him something he hadn't had in years, hope. The laughter from the courtroom began to die down. The prosecutor cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to regain control of the room, but there was no ignoring the strange energy that had suddenly taken hold. Judge Parker's hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair. The audience held their breath as they watched him slowly start to push himself up. It was a movement so slow and deliberate that for a moment, no one understood what was happening. Then, the room went silent. The judge's legs, which had been motionless for years, began to tremble. He pushed himself up from the wheelchair, rising higher and higher until he was fully standing. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Was this possible? Was he really standing? Judge Parker's face was strained, his body trembling from the effort. It was clear that standing was not easy for him, but there he was, on his feet. He took a tentative step forward, his legs shaking beneath him. Then another. The room was still, watching in stunned silence as the man, who had once been paralyzed, began to walk. The little girl's smile never wavered. She wasn't surprised. In her heart, she knew that if she could make this promise, then somehow, against all odds, it would be fulfilled. She had always known that miracles were real. She had always known that love and faith could move mountains. And in this moment, she had made the impossible happen. The judge, now standing in front of her, lowered himself to one knee, his breath ragged from the effort. "I don't know how you did it," he said, his voice soft but full of awe. "But you've given me something I haven't had in years, hope." The little girl simply smiled. "I told you I would make you walk," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The courtroom remained silent, stunned by the sight before them. The judge, now standing, walked to the front of the room with a new sense of purpose. He had been reminded of something he had forgotten, something that had slipped away from him in the years of his disability. Hope was a powerful thing. Faith was a powerful thing. And sometimes it took the belief of a child to restore it. Her father, still shackled in the back of the courtroom, watched in disbelief. Tears welled up in his eyes as he saw the transformation. His daughter had not only given him a chance at freedom, but she had also helped the judge rediscover something that he had lost long ago. And then, when it was time for the judge to render his verdict, he did so with clarity. The charges against the girl's father were dismissed. The truth had been revealed, and it was clear that justice would be served. The little girl had not just saved her father. She had saved everyone in that courtroom from the despair that had once gripped them. The judge stood tall, no longer confined by the chair he had spent so many years in, and as the courtroom erupted in applause, the little girl and her father shared a quiet moment, for in that moment, the world seemed a little brighter. And the power of one child's belief had proven that miracles were not only possible, they were real. If you're part of the Black Visionaries family, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Tell us what you think about this incredible story. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep believing.